Everyone. My name is Gurdeep Kaur. I am a Senior Economic Development Planner here at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. And the Economic Development Team will be presenting on grant opportunities that are available currently through the Commonwealth. So these are my colleagues. We thank you for joining us today. Today, you'll be hearing from Raul, Camille, Angela, myself, and two guest speakers, Pat from the Executive Office of Economic Development and Julie from the town of Acton. We have a packed agenda today, as you can see, and we are going to try to stick to it as best as possible. So first off, you'll be hearing about the Community One Stop for Growth from Pat.
All right, great. Thank you very much. So I'm Pat Shannon. I serve as the Community One Stop Coordinator for the Executive Office of Economic Development, and thanks for having me today. So I think we can get started with the next slide. Great. So I'm going to start with a quick overview of the One Stop. So the Community One Stop for Growth was born out of feedback that we received from communities across Massachusetts about the challenges that they faced accessing the various community economic development grant opportunities offered across multiple state agencies. So each of these programs had separate deadlines, they had separate applications, different requirements, and different review criteria. And it made it difficult for communities to keep track of the different programs or even know about the opportunities that the state offered that could potentially help advance the community's economic development goals. So to solve this issue, the Community One Stop for Growth was created. So the One Stop, So the One Stop basically consolidates several community economic development and housing grant opportunities offered by the Executive Office of Economic Development, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and Mass Development Finance Agency into a single grant portal with one application and a collaborative review process. This was a major shift both in that applicants requested from the state, and it also completely changed the way that the three agencies and various programs work together to serve communities. So with the simplification structure, any project submitted through the One Stop has the potential to be reviewed in multiple grant programs. So you get one application can get reviewed or get you access to, one to maybe three potential programs that could fit the project. In the past, that would mean 3 separate applications. Here, it's just one application, saving the applicant just a ton of time to use the opportunity of the project being funded. So because of the structure, applicants don't apply to a specific program within the One Stop. They actually apply based on kind of type of project that they would like to be funded. So this takes us to a very important component of the One Stop, which is our development continuum. So the development continuum is the framework behind the One Stop application. The continuum represents the life cycle of a major development project, from the initial community visioning to the final construction improvements that will, produce jobs or housing units. So applicants should look to the development continuum as a guide for where their project fits with One Stop. All projects submitted through the One Stop should generally fit with a single development continuum category. Here on the screen, you can see a graphic with the development continuum. So the continuum is broken up into 2 broad categories. We have preparing for growth, which supports the activities and initial steps by community-based actors to attract and guide investment in a community. The first development continuum category in this bucket is community activation and placemaking. So this category includes grants to support projects and programs aimed at identifying and enhancing community assets. This could mean assets in terms of local environment, or it could mean assets in terms of the members of the community, people in the community. The programs that are supported by this category are the Mass Downtown Initiative, and the Real Estate Services. Oh, I'm sorry, Mass Downtown Initiative and the Urban Agenda Grant Program. That's getting ahead of myself. So next, going down the line, we have planning and zoning. So this category is focused on community-led planning efforts that are focused on either planning for housing, planning for economic development or economic growth, or focused on zoning revisions within the community. So this category is home to Community Planning Grant Program, as well as a component of the Real Estate Services Technical Assistance Program that's focused on planning for downtown districts, or for mixed use and industrial districts. The final category within preparing for growth is site preparation. So this category supports work that's required to make a parcel with development potential attractive to the private market. So often these will be great development opportunities for a community that just need a little bit of work to get them to really cross the finish line to where developers are just the private market is ready to invest. The programs category includes Site Readiness Program and the Brownfield Redevelopment Fund. There's also Real Estate Services Technical Assistance also has presence here with their municipal surplus property disposition kind of side of the program. So next we'll move into the catalyzing specific projects section. So this has two development continuum categories. First, we have the buildings category. The buildings category is focused on grants that support the redevelopment of existing buildings to either bring new housing or jobs to the community. So the two main programs in this category are the Underutilized Properties Program, which is focused on building rehabilitation, as well as the Collaborative Workspace Program, which, as the name suggests, is focused on basically allowing new co-working space, maker space, shared kitchens, spaces like that come to life and really bring new jobs and opportunities to members of the community. Our final development continuum category is infrastructure. So infrastructure supports the construction of publicly owned infrastructure that's required to allow or make private development feasible within the community. So this could be, maybe the community needs to build a new road or extend a water or sewer line in order to make an impactful housing or economic development project feasible. So the two programs in this category are the MassWorks Infrastructure Program and the new Housing Works Infrastructure Program, which is offered by EOHLC, Housing Livable Communities, and we are extremely excited to have this fully into the one-stop this year. If you go to the next slide, please. Great, thank you. All right, so here you can see the list of all 12 programs within the one-stop. I did just walk through each of the programs and where they fall within the development continuum. I did leave out two important programs. So first is our Rural Development Fund. The Rural Development Fund is available to organizations within communities that have either a population of 7,000 or less, or a population density of under 500 persons per square mile. So this is a great program that allows for a good deal of investment in our smaller towns across the state. The Rural Development Fund will review and consider funding any project submitted by an eligible applicant within the planning and zoning, site preparation, building, or infrastructure categories, with the exception of collaborative workspace and brownfield projects. So other than that, they'll pretty much consider any project submitted in those categories. The other program that I failed to mention in the previous slide is the Housing Choice Grant Program. And this is available to any public entities and communities that have housing choice designation through EOHLC. So just like Rural Development Fund, Housing Choice will consider projects submitted in those same categories. So planning, site prep, building, and infrastructure. And again, with the exception of collaborative workspace and brownfields. Those two programs just have kind of a really specific, require a little more specific knowledge from the programs that run them. So I'll just know that if your community is eligible for either of these programs, I highly recommend reviewing the program guidelines so that you can get a better understanding of the details of the programs and their requirements and limitations. All right, next slide, please. All right, so here we have a map of the one-stop process. So there's essentially 4 phases to the one-stop, to each one-stop round. We have the guidance phase, which we're currently in. This is when you have the opportunity to submit expressions of interest, watch our webinars, which are currently all recorded and available on the website, and participate in virtual office hours, which we have going on right now. I'll just note that we have completely kind of updated the expression of interest process. The EOI is now just a very simple web form accessed from our website. Really, really probably shouldn't take more than 5 minutes to complete. And you can submit multiple EOIs, which is new this year. So if you have different projects, if you kind of have different ideas that come up over the course of the next couple months, you're certainly welcome to come back and resubmit EOIs. The full application is also currently open. You can work on your applications right now in our IGX system, but you will not be able to submit until the full application submission period begins in May. The application deadline is June 5th, and once that hits, we launch into our collaborative review. This is where staff from the 3 agencies work together to review all applications and make sure each application is reviewed by the appropriate programs and that the highest impact projects are funded. Again, it's a super competitive process, and yeah, we have a lot of work to do. So this takes most of the summer until we get to our award decisions. And so this year we're hoping to announce awards in September, which is a little bit expedited compared to past years. And I will note that if you submit an application and are not granted an award, we do offer the opportunity for feedback meetings. All right, so I'll just go to my last slide here. So I just wanted to end with a quick overview of the timeline, which I've already kind of gone over. But again, we're currently in the guidance phase, so I definitely recommend anybody that's planning on submitting or considering submitting a full application to visit our website, where you can access all 3 of our guidance tools. We have a ton of information out there, so please check it out, and feel free to ask questions during this period. Again, our full application submission period begins May 6th and runs through our deadline of Wednesday, June 5th at 11:59 p.m. We always have folks that submit at 11:59 p.m. and I will just highly recommend getting your applications in a little bit earlier so that we can help you with any technical issues that come through. There's always those cases at the end of the deadline day that we hate to see happen when technology doesn't work out. And then again, as noted, we'll take the summer to review your applications, and we'll release our decisions in September. So, and again, on the screen, you can see our one-stop email address, onestop@mass.gov. So please reach out if you have any questions. We're happy to always happy to answer questions. And yeah, definitely check out the website. This is a very quick overview of a pretty complicated process, so we have a ton of resources available. Great. So I think that concludes my presentation, and I will hand it over to Angela.
Great. Thank you, Pat. That was a terrific overview of the 12 different programs that are available via the One Stop. And just as we were mentioning earlier, we're going to be going through 3 different funding programs today, or opportunities. So yeah, wanted to mention very briefly that there is an option that is available at the municipality's choice. It's not at all a requirement. It's absolutely your choice, that you have the opportunity to work with MAPC as your partner and designated technical assistance provider, particularly for community planning or some of the early stages of the continuum that Pat was mentioning in his very helpful overview. MAPC can potentially add to the competitiveness of the application by expanding the project budget in this way. So here's an example with planning and zoning work that we did with the town of Rentham, and it was for a master plan. We prepared a master plan to guide land use. The application, sorry, was for a master plan to guide land use, development, preservation for a 10-year period. In this case, this is a few years back. It was funded through the Community One Stop in FY22 in the amount of $50,000, and MAPC provided a letter of support and pre-committed $30,000. Thereby expanding the project budget to a total of $80,000. Again, we are just sharing these examples by way of illustration to see how this could potentially work, given what your project concept may potentially require. If it looks like it's complicated for any reasons that you might need a larger project budget, we're here to work with you and adapt a project budget that can really work with your project's needs. Next slide, please. This is another one, and again, these are 2 examples in which we partnered with the municipality, both to develop the application and on assuming a successful award, on going ahead and preparing, conducting the planning activities. Here, in this case, we were working with Wakefield on a master plan. Again, this is from a few years ago. It actually built on a prior engagement that MAPC did with the town, a visioning process. And in this case, again, it was funded a one-stop grant award of $50,000. In that case, it came through the urban agenda, and we provided a match of $17,000. Thus increasing the project budget to $67,500. So again, these are just illustrations. They vary, as though I have been speaking of examples that entailed comprehensive planning. The economic development team here at MAPC stands ready to work with you on perhaps an economic development plan, townwide, citywide, or in a designated priority district, and can similarly provide a letter of support and a match commitment, should that be something that is of interest or helpful to the project's needs. And from here, I'm going to pass it to Raul Gonzalez, my colleague. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Angela. Hello, everybody. I'm Raul Gonzalez, a Senior Economic Development Planner with MAPC. Today, I have the pleasure of presenting an overview on the planning assistance grants offered by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. These grants represent a great opportunity for municipalities across Massachusetts to champion sustainable development and economic development practices that are in harmony with our state's sustainable development principles. Next slide. The Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs extends these grants to support Massachusetts cities and towns in their quest for better land use practices. These grants underscore the agency's commitment to a future where development and conservation go hand in hand, ensuring a resilient, sustainable environment for all residents. Through these grants, they are empowering communities to plan, regulate, and act in alignment with the Sustainable Development Principles. And if MAPC is a partner in this process, it can also incorporate different types of excess of funds for your municipalities to work in these grants. Next slide, please. In 2023, their objectives and priorities were focused on encouraging municipalities to adopt land use regulations that foster conservation and sustainable development. This can go from zoning reforms that promote sustainable housing and land conservation to initiatives aimed at climate change mitigation. Their goal has been to support projects that address these areas, paving a way for a more sustainable and equitable Massachusetts. Next slide. We anticipate the request for proposals for the fiscal year 2025 grant round to be issued in either this month or early next month. We encourage interested municipalities to prepare their proposals, adhering to the submission timelines detailed within the RFP. We can definitely give you some more information on previous iterations and previous awardees, but successful projects will be announced later in the year, and we invite all eligible entities to review the application instructions and documents carefully as they do change from year to year to ensure a competitive proposal. Next slide. Just really quickly recognizing some projects from previous grant rounds, projects like the zoning implementation efforts in Maynard and Acton for the Powderville Road Corridor, Swampscott's climate action initiatives, and climate change action plans developed by Framingham and Malden that identified different types of projects that have been done across the MAPC region. Next slide. Just reflecting on the past year's accomplishments and the focus areas, the FY24 grant round aimed to bolster municipal capabilities in sustainable land use practices. These grants served as a vital tool for municipalities and regional planning agencies, enabling them to navigate and implement strategies for sustainable development, housing diversity, climate resilience, and climate change mitigation. We look forward to your proposals and the opportunity to support your initiatives. As we look forward to another year of impactful projects, we do remind you all to reach out to Kurt listed here with any questions or further clarification. So I think it's just a really great opportunity for you all to connect with us as well, should you have any interest in applying to this program, and definitely utilizing MAPC and a partner for technical assistance here. So I'm going to now pass it over to Camille to go over the Community Compact Cabinet.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Raul. So you all have heard now about two different programs. You've heard about One Stop, you've heard about the EEA Planning Assistance. I'm going to talk a bit about the Community Compact Cabinet Best Practices Program. So yeah, as Raul said, I'm an economic development planner here at MAPC. And Community Compact is a really excellent program. It's the Community Compact Cabinet is an initiative at the governor's office to really work with municipalities, and they have a variety of programs. But the best practices program that we'll talk about today is really meant for municipalities to implement their best practices that are unique to their needs. So on the right here, you see the 2024 best practice areas, and there are a lot. So this ranges from, you see age and dementia friendly opportunities, there's IT best practices, veteran services, and we're really going to talk about economic development ones today. But if you're not familiar with all these programs and these best practice areas, it's a fantastic opportunity. Typically in past years, we have seen the program open in August, and grants are awarded on a first come, first serve basis. We've seen it be fairly competitive, so we encourage folks to be ready for when it launches in August if they want to pursue one of these. I believe it's open to any community that did not receive a Community Compact Best Practices Program Award in the prior year. So basically you can't do 2 years in a row, but otherwise it's pretty open. And you can also check out all of the past projects that were funded through this program on their website, which I think is really helpful and a great way to get your mind rolling on what are the different projects that I could be doing in my community. So to talk through the economic development best practice areas within economic development, you can work on all kinds of projects through this program. So you can create an economic development plan like we've been talking about. You can do aligning land use regulations with things like your vision for housing in your community, for example. You can create and distribute a business guide. You'll actually get to hear from our star guest, Julie Pierce, about something that we worked on with Acton later today. You can pursue key community designations or certifications. Maybe that's a climate-based certification or other ones. You can establish priority development sites. You can look into expedited permitting processes. Digital equity planning, creating a district management entity, whether that's a bid or some other kind of entity. You can look into adopting as of right zoning or establish and utilize performance data for things like seeing if your economic initiatives are really performing in the way that you want them to and intend them to. So those are the highlights of the Community Compact program. And, you know, of course, at the end, we can answer questions about any of these grants. You can put them in the chat now or raise your hand later. But for now, I'm going to pass it to Angela Brown to talk about MAPC's technical assistance.
Thank you, Camille. Again, I'm Angela Brown, Chief of Economic Development here at MAPC. We can just go ahead to our next slide. And I'm just going to take a few minutes to kind of put on the table a variety of different ways that MAPC's Economic Development Team is available to work with you through all different phases of exploring, considering, and perhaps applying for one of the 3 funding programs shared with you today. First, we certainly are available to do one-on-one consultations, phone calls, meetings virtually to really brainstorm on ideas that you may be thinking about. What are the most pressing community needs as it pertains to economic development in your city or town? We're certainly happy to do some idea brainstorming. The second one is, okay, so now you've identified a particular need or opportunity and want to think about an economic development project engagement. Is it creating perhaps a vision for economic development land uses and activities, economic clusters, et cetera, for your city or town, and going through a visioning process? Is it a more formal establishment of a plan that would actually guide economic development activities throughout the vicinity covered? Things like that. So coming up with the project concept and exploring, you know, does this lend itself to a fit with one or more of the different funding programs? Thirdly, okay, now we have a project concept and it's time to really get down to nuts and bolts. We're able to really compare notes with the community, the city or town, on sample projects that we may have worked on or come across in our travels, and have an understanding of the work scope, what were the methodologies employed, what was the final deliverable produced, and how was it intended to be utilized, what activities go into that process, approximate timeline. We want something that really can fit within a grant period under these 3 established programs and fit within the typical funding levels of each. To that point, when we're working with the community on comparing with sample work scopes, products, activities, and deliverables, we are able to, in very rough terms, I want to emphasize, come up with a preliminary budget. That budget will need to be refined, of course, prior to final submittal, but at least kind of giving you a sense of to achieve the scope, what would be the rough approximate budget amount needed. As I mentioned earlier, when we were chatting about the Mass Community One Stop for Growth, the first of the 3 funding programs we talked about today, that in some cases, we have available matching funds from MAPC's own resources that can be paired together with an anticipated grant award from one of these programs, particularly the One Stop. We've done this on many occasions. So that's another form of assistance where, again, and it's at the municipality's choice, that it has decided that it would like to partner with the MAPC Economic Development Team in completing the project. And then we're always available to the best of our ability to just answer questions in regards to different programs based on our experience and just anecdotes that we would be happy to share as you're really working through what are the best avenues to proceed and what timing works for you, etc. So it's really, really great that each of you now have had an opportunity to learn about the 3 state funding sort of opportunities or windows that are available through the Mass Community One Stop, that's open right now, through the EEA Planning Assistance Grants, which is anticipated to open soon, and then the Commonwealth Cabinet Community Compact best practices that Camille just shared. We're so excited to have shared these opportunities, hope that you will really give them thought, and I'm happy now to turn it over to Julie Peters.
Thank you so much, Angela and Camille, for inviting me to share my experience working with MAPC. So the project that I worked on with MAPC was creating a how to do business in Acton guide. And I'm only going to speak briefly, but I'm just going to talk through process, people, tools, my experience, and a few key takeaways. So I started in this role at the very end of 2021, and I am the Economic and Community Development Director for the town of Acton. This is the town's first full-time economic development position. And one of the things I started doing when I started in the position was site visits with business owners. And consistently, the feedback that I received was this perception that navigating the rules and regulations was just an absolute quagmire. And the solution that I thought of was creating a guide. I was often asked, do you have just a checklist that I could go through for starting my business? Or do you have a checklist for expanding? Or do you have a checklist for events? And initially I tried to create one on my own, but there were always too many scenarios to fit into just 1 or 2 or 3 pages. So that's where I came up with the idea for a guide. At the same time, I'm an office of 1, so there just was not time to work on. So I applied to the Community Compact Best Practices Program in the fall of 22, and we were awarded to work with an APC in early 23. So next is people, and I want to talk about this in 2 layers. So as I said, I'm an office primarily of 1, and what I was looking for was, particularly for this project, this expansion of my help me with this outreach. She helped me put together. I have feedback that we lost sound.
Julie, you froze, but you're back.
Okay, I'm back. All right. So I was saying that I wanted to talk about this aspect of people in 2 layers. So what I was expecting was this help in terms of outreach to the community. I work primarily with Camille in terms of reaching out to the business community, gathering their feedback, and putting together this guide. But the other kind of nuanced piece that came out of working with MAPC was that MAPC really came alongside me and amplified my capacity in the sense that I really felt like I had colleagues. So that was just such a great outcome of this project. And we can go to the next. So the next layer were the tools for this project. So one was just the staff expertise. So both directly, say with Camille and Angela, but then also as things came up, they could reach out to others on their staff to see, oh, you know, if others had a lived experience or had learned about things that we were encountering. They also had access to data and research that was relevant to what I was working on. And then the final tool we co-designed this business tour that we used to both gather feedback from business owners and kind of preview what the guide would be and how it could be used. And yes, thank you, Angela. That was a photo from the business tour. Thank you. And then I thought that this quote really summed up my experience. So this is a quote from Jackie Robinson: "Life is not a spectator sport." So my experience on this was we were shoulder to shoulder, really diving in. And as much as, you know, I'm out there every day working in the business community, I felt like I made deeper inroads because I had the extra partnership during this project. So these are my key takeaways. One is if you have the opportunity to work with MAPC, take it. Number two is being really clear about the scope of work will help, but also be flexible. There were things that I learned along the way that you know, there's that old saying, you know, if you knew what, if I knew then what I know now. So you always, with every scoped project, you want to be super clear, but also things come up. So you want to be flexible. This working with them really extended my both experience and my capacity, especially being new in my role. And then just in general, being an office of one, it amplified my capacity. And just thank you, MAPC. That's my final thing to say.
Thank you so much, Julie. All right. So this is just an overview of the upcoming deadlines. You've had a chance to hear about all three of the opportunities available, as well as somebody who has successfully gone through the process. So now we have time to open it up for Q&A. Before we do that, one second, previous slide. I know we're gonna lose a few people before we dive into Q&A. So I just wanted to emphasize that these deadlines are going to be here before we know it. It's already almost the end of the first quarter of the year. And just wanted to emphasize that. And then for next steps for working with us, feel free to reach out to myself, Angela, Raul, or Camille, and we are happy to schedule one-on-one meetings with you to brainstorm any ideas you have, to figure out, even if a project may not seem at first glance that this is an economic development project, we can help you figure out where it might fit best, and if it qualifies as a project. So yeah, you could get started to receive support on the applications, either brainstorming or if you already have something in progress, or as often happens, there was an idea that a previous perhaps team had started on, and that team has moved on, and now it's landed on your desk, or it's been sitting dormant. You know, brush that off and resurrect it, and then of course get those applications in, either working with us or internally with your own teams. But that's the important thing, to get those applications in. So now I see that there weren't very many questions in the chat itself, So as we move into Q&A, I welcome folks to just unmute themselves, and everyone can come off of mute if you want to participate in the discussion, and feel free to ask your questions openly. We have Julie here, we have Pat here, we have the MAPC Economic Development Team here at your disposal, and we have ample time for questions.
My question was, what are the virtual office hours and what are they used for typically?
And that's specific to the one stop. Was that the one
Yeah, I
stop
think it
virtual
was
office
during
hours? Yep.
your, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, great. So the virtual office hours are new this year. So we're about halfway through our office hours series. So basically we kind of broke it up into two series. So first we have general stop office hours. So we had our first general office hour, I think maybe 2 weeks ago. It's the last, I don't know, time flies, hard to keep track. But those are basically opportunities for prospective applicants to ask questions about the general process, the development continuum, about any technology questions they have. And we have our program office hours. So each of the 12 programs is hosting one 1 hour office hour, which are going on right now. We actually just had our collaborative workspace office hour for this webinar. And we will be having, so tomorrow we have our site readiness office hour. Thursday we have our underutilized properties program office hour. Next week we'll have MassWorks, Housing Works, and I believe Housing Choice, and then we'll have Rural Development Fund office hour the following week. So these are opportunities to interact with the program managers from each of those programs. Ask any questions you have about the program. We generally try to stay away from any. You can ask even project questions about your own projects. We're not gonna give advice as, is it competitive or not, but it's a great opportunity to have your question answered. We host them kind of in an open house format, so we host it as a webinar, so folks can join, ask their questions in the Q&A. We also have a submission form online, so you can post questions ahead of time. And yeah, like it's open house, so it's not one-on-one sessions, but we want everybody that's interested in attending to be able to benefit from the questions asked and answers provided. So we have our full schedule of office hours on the site, mass.gov/onestop. You do have to register to get the link. You can register, right before report starts. And again, you'll find the form to submit a question there as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, since nobody's asking a question, I have one more. It was a community compact cabinet part of the presentation. I was wondering, what is as of right zoning? Like, what is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually going to have Gurdeep answer that one, since I think she'll give the best answer.
So certain uses require special permits, and by right zoning would mean like things that you don't need to go through extra conditions of approval to obtain and operate as. One example might be, while a restaurant might be by right, a bar would require additional standards of approval. I thought I saw somebody else come off of mute. I also, as I have before, I'm going to emphasize one of the things that we all often talk about here, not just on our team, but throughout MAPC, is our commitment to equity. And we mean that more than just, lip service. We have a library of tools available, practices, guides on how does equity show up in your project. So if you are working on a project application and it's saying, hey, speak to equity in your community, and a lot of communities do struggle with that. You might have a community that's largely homogeneous, or you may not understand you may not know how to quite identify all the challenges. So we do have a whole library here and an entire team dedicated to how to bring in equity into projects, and that can help enhance your application and your overall project.
Can I chime in on that, Gurdeep? I just wanted to add that one component of equity is around equitable process. And so if one is doing a new planning and zoning initiative, perhaps changing some of the zoning or land use designations, as Gurdeep was talking about, you want to have a very full and equitable and fair and inclusive community engagement component to that. Ideally, we certainly have that as a value. So to have equitable process, that sometimes can mean additional focus groups, further surveying, going on site and in person with a focus group, having a community workshop, have language interpretation. Those types of things can add to the project budget. But we really feel quite strongly that they absolutely will get to a better end product. At the end of the day, you're going to have better findings, more inclusive information, and a better direction at the end of the engagement. So something to think about in terms of as you're doing project budgeting, and as I was speaking of earlier, extending that project budget to include a really equitable community engagement process. It's just one element of what Gurdeep was talking about.
Thank you, Angela. And we have a question here in the chat from Eric from Stoneham. I think this is directed towards Pat. Will the newly filed economic bond bill impact funding availability for the one-stop program, specifically MassWorks?
So, so the governor just released the bill. There's a few kind of steps before we will actually know. Has to go, through the legislature, has to go through House, Senate, and so we don't quite know yet what the final product's going to look like. But to answer your question, yes, the bill does has authorizations for the various programs, so that does include MassWorks. Basically, kind of setting what could be allocated to the program over I want to say it's 10 years. I'm not 100% certain on the length. I believe it's 10 years. But yeah, there's also the specific call outs for certain programs within the one stop. So yes, it will impact how much funding the programs receive in the coming years.
All right. So if that's about it, maybe by a show of hands, using the raise hand feature, if people want to let us know if you're interested in applying, if we've convinced you, and we will be sending this presentation and recording out after this webinar. Again, feel free to reach out to us directly. Camille, could you put that slide with our contact information back up, just for folks who would like to send us an email right away? Right. So thank you for joining us. That's my email address, gcar@mapc.org. Feel free to reach out to any of us and we will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for your time today.